Now my question is, if the tree of life that was in the garden was Christ and was God's will, how about a tree of the knowledge of good and evil whose fruit they ate? What was it?
This is a very nice question. I appreciate it very much. The mystery of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was the mystery of free will, also called the freedom to make choices for good or bad without the authorization of any authority. Man took this freedom to do his own will, while distancing himself from God. This is why the Bible tells us that God allowed man to work 6 days to do his own will, and the seventh day, which is God's day, must be kept holy and put aside for God, according to Exodus 20 verses 8 to 11.
If eating the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was up to man to choose to do his own will, how about God's will? Who does it? And when God's will be done?
I'm proud of you, Jane. You always have nice questions. Man's will was carried out during the years of the reign of death, during the first 6 days. Now we are in the age of the day of the manifestation of the will of God, who is Christ. The age of Christ is God's holy day, the seventh day, called rest, God's Sabbath, which the Bible calls today, according to Hebrews 4 verses 7 through 9. Let's read. God fixes again a day, today, saying in David, so long after, as it says above, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, he would not speak after that of another day. So there's a Sabbath rest reserved for God's people. Father, if they had the freedom to make choices for good or evil, a freedom is a freedom, why did God consider it a sin if they had the freedom of choices? My son, you mixed things up. God or God's will was the only authority to obey in the garden. The freedom of choice, called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, was not allowed for man to do it. The only being who could do anything without the permission of any authority was God alone, because he has no superiority above him. Let's read what Scripture said about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in Genesis 2 verses 16 to 17. Jehovah God commanded man, you must eat of all the trees in the garden, but you must not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for in the day you will eat of it, you will surely die. Although it was a freedom, this freedom of choice was not allowed to man to enjoy according to his own will. Father, you mean to tell us that it was because Adam and Eve chose the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil without God's permission which resulted in their spiritual death? How did this death happen? Certainly, my son, they were not allowed to enjoy this freedom of choice. Eating the fruits of the tree means making the choice to be autonomous, having no authority to fear. That was the woman's will. She wanted to be like